Throughout all history, the living Church of Jesus Christ has been answering the challenges of its times. It has been the salt and the light, the bread and the water. Towards the end of 2013, Ukraine entered the period of its highest geopolitical turbulence. Regardless of your opinion on the Maidan revolution, one thing is clear. When tens of thousands of people knelt down to pray and repent, when blood was shed and the hope for dignity arose in spite of the memory of the slavery, the Church rose to the challenge and stood up. It offered tea and bread to the hungry, aided the wounded, and shared warmth when it was cold. Then came the invasion of Crimea, resulting in the first refugees and daily prayers in churches and city squares. Next, Slavyansk was occupied, and confusion and mass evacuation resulted, followed by the arranging of camps for refugees and day and night hotlines. The Church again rose to the challenge. It offered a solution. Evangelical Christians were regarded as ideological enemies at that time. In May, Bishop Alexei Demidovich was arrested. Thankfully, he was miraculously able to escape from captivity. On June 8, on the Day of Trinity, 4 church ministers were kidnapped right from a service at Transformation Church of Slavyansk. They were brutally tortured and murdered early in the morning of the next day. Their bodies were burned in the outskirts of town. Later, the torturers and murderers said, "We wanted to demoralize all believers." Rescue those being led away to death. This proverb has become the slogan of the Church. All denomination differences have been demolished. The troubles have united all Christians, and they stand like a united army, serving people in this vital time in history. Svetogorsk hosts the first large camp for internally displaced people. Thousands of lives are being saved. The churches are mobilizing their resources, gathering food, clothing and medicine, and raising money. Camps like this appear throughout Ukraine. Christians are opening the doors of their homes to thousands of traumatized people. July 5 of 2014 was the day when the Lord miraculously saved Slavyansk. Ukrainian soldiers took out 3 trucks of weapons from the building of the Good News Church, previously occupied by separatists. The church has become a headquarters for saving people. Emmanuel was one of the first organizations that came to the town. They found the ruins of destroyed homes, projectiles sticking out in asphalt, broken windows, stray dogs, closed shops, and an absence of city authorities. The people who had stayed in town were afraid to go out of their homes. They could still hear the sounds of shooting and explosions at night. Questions rang in the air. What should we do? Should we stay? Should we rebuild everything? Or will they come back again?
We came to visit several families with young kids whose homes were destroyed. We decided to start rebuilding their homes because winter was coming.
Humanitarian caravans started coming into Slavyansk from all over the Ukraine. Christians from western and central Ukraine brought food and construction materials. Volunteers came to help rebuild homes. Russian-speaking ministries and American and European churches gathered loads of clothes, food and monetary aid. In times of tragedy, heroes are born. Gennady Lysenko, Alexander Reshetnik, and Pavel Abramchuk stayed in the occupied town until the end. They helped refugees leave the town, sometimes even carrying them in their arms. They brought people water and food. All these 3 men were arrested and only escaped death by a miracle. Petr Dudnik, pastor of the Good News Church, Galina Kucher, director of social projects for CBN Emmanuel, and Alexei Fedchenko, co-ordinator of the Save Ukraine, each directed multi-level activities of evangelical Christian volunteers from various denominations and countries. Dozens of loads of humanitarian aid are coming to Ukraine. There are hundreds of other heroes who have made the spreading of the gospel and the salvation of souls their primary focus. Before long, Slavyansk was revived. Soon as was filled with internally displaced people, escaping from occupied territories. It was obvious that we needed to serve people in the frontline villages. Deep grief was present among the crowds of people with no money to meet their daily needs, no working banks, grocery stores, hospitals or schools, and with destroyed homes. This was the terrible reality in eastern Ukraine.
When we came to Zolotoye for the first time, we brought 1,000 loaves of bread, baby formula and diapers. We brought everything these people needed. When we came to the point of distribution, a crowd of angry people greeted us and looked at us with hatred. They were blaming us for everything that was happening there. It felt like they were ready to tear us to pieces. Our initial human instinct was to leave and never return to these people or this town again. Let them reap their own bitterness and let them feed themselves. But the Lord had a different plan. We came for the second time, and for the third, and the fourth time, and it became obvious that they will never find peace without God, even when the guns stop shooting. We saw the first fruits of our work in Krasnogorovka when the church became the vanguard in the forces helping the locals. People kept telling us that their lives were spared thanks to the church.
The church in action means 16,000 people evacuated from Slavyansk and other towns on the front line. 9 new houses built in place of those which were destroyed. 198 reconstructed houses. Provision for 60 people living at the refugee center. Provision for 50 internally displaced social orphans, disabled people and mothers with young children. 60,000 free loaves of bread delivered to the front lines. Hot meals for over 1,000 people per day during the period of evacuation. Support for 32 soup kitchens in occupied territories. 200 tons of vegetables. Over 110,000 food sets and 90,000 hygiene sets. 158,000 sets of medicine, thousands of cubic meters of firewood, hundreds of stoves, about 4,000 of blankets, clothing and shoes for refugees and people living on the front lines, amounting in over 1 million hryvnias, psychological help and support for over 50,000 people.
Ukraine desperately needs your prayer and financial support during these difficult times. I am asking you to support Word of Hope International Ministries and help us to bring hope to the front lines. We now have several ways for you to donate. First, you can visit our website at wordofhope.tv and click on Give Online. Second, you can download the free Secure Give app from your own app store. Then search for Word of Hope and set it as your home organization to give through the mobile app. Third, you can also text your amount to 941-202-6822 and follow the instructions received by text. May God bless you all, and thank you for your generous support.